So what happens if the house doesn't appraise for what you're purchasing it for? It's a very common question and a very real fear, especially as the spring market picks up and multiple offers start to happen. So the lender, if you're using a loan, the lender is always going to require an appraisal be performed by an independent third-party appraiser, and they're just trying to determine that, hey, what you're buying the house for is what the house is actually worth, and that is backed up by data, it's backed up by recent sales and comparable market statistics. And this really becomes kind of an issue here in Illinois, especially in the spring, because appraisers, they typically have to find at least one sale within the last 3 months, and sales aren't supposed to be outside of the last 6 months unless there's some really like weird funky quirk about the house and it makes it tough to find a comparable property. So in the spring, when our market picks up and houses start going for at or above asking price, appraisers are using comps and sold house comps from the winter time here in Illinois when houses were a little bit slower. Maybe they went for at or below asking price. And so that difference in spring market versus winter market pricing sometimes brings in some issues with the appraisals, especially if when the spring market is picking up, all of a sudden there's crazy bidding wars. So as a buyer, you need to be cognizant of that, of when things are selling and what it'll appraise for. You want to make sure that as the best you can, make sure there's not going to be any appraisal issues. And this really became a concern when the spring market was really hitting in the COVID years and things were doing crazy multiple offers over asking price. And some people were even saying, I'll waive the appraisal or I'll pay so much over the appraisal price. We're not seeing that as much anymore, but that's not to say there can't be an issue with what the actual appraisal comes in at. So as the buyer, probably the first step is you're going to ask the seller to reduce the purchase price to what that appraisal came in at. And the seller can then either say yes or they can say no. If they say yes, well, then you're in agreement and you're moving forward. If they say no, then you have the option to, potentially get out of the contract and go on and find a different house. Or you could pay the difference in the appraisal price versus the purchase price in cash. So say it appraises for $275. But the purchase price agreement's at $300,000. You could bring that $25,000 difference, which is a big chunk of money, and it's always tough to kind of come up with that cash last minute. There are some workarounds where maybe you can work with your lender on doing less of a down payment and just bring in the same amount of cash. But it just becomes a question as to what you feel most comfortable with at that point. And then there's also, hey, maybe we'll meet in the middle. It's at 300 is our agreement. It appraised at 275. Let's meet at, say, call it 285 and kind of split the difference type thing. So the appraisal is there to protect the buyer, to make sure that what they're purchasing the house for is actually what the house is valued for. And so it's really important as a buyer that you don't get all crazy and fall in love with the house and throw out an appraisal waiver because they could end up costing you more cash at the end of the day that you weren't prepared for or weren't expecting, or it then dives into the funds you were planning on using to buy the couch and the TV and all the fun stuff of the house. So when you're working with your real estate professional, make sure you're kind of looking at what comps are for the appraisals and all that, and try to get your best offer in while not severely overpaying for the house.